This is the entire 𝗏 Sega Mega Drive EA Collection. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. For 4 years now, I've been wanting to make this video about the full EA 𝗏 collection, but I didn't want to do it until I actually owned the full EA 𝗏 collection. In today's show, you're going to see a full core set plus a full variant set. Major variant set is the caveat there. Now, what do I mean by a full core set? This is every single game that EA officially released in 𝗏 territories, all 𝗏 territories, plus major variants. Now, major variants are where the ROM is different on the cartridge, or either the cartridge or the sleeve are very different. We don't have minor variants in this collection, so things like store stickers that were different on the front, or 1 or 2 languages printed differently on the back of the box. And we don't have cartridges that perhaps have printing mistakes on there. So the core collection plus major variants. Now, at the end of the show, we'll have a full list of the 𝗏 games that came out. But before that, we're going to take a look at variants, the Black Label collection, the Australian collection, the Swedish collection, games that came with collectibles, Genesis exclusives, and my top 5 favorite EA games. It's a big show, so let's get into it. We're going to kick off this EA special show with the Black Label collection. The first 2 Black Spine games were published by Sega, and these would be the last 2 games that Sega would publish from EA before EA went it alone, back-engineered their own cartridges, and started releasing their own games on their own cartridges in their own boxes. Now, these 2 games also got these 2 collector's cards. They didn't come with the games themselves, they were part of a Panini collection of cards for the Sega Mega Drive. And it's not just these 2 games that got these Panini collector's cards, there are a few others as well in the collection. Our third game isn't technically an EA game, it was co-developed by EA. EA built the technology that put in some of the awesome speech sound effects that you find in Joe Montana. So whether you count this as part of the EA collection is up to you, but it was developed in part by EA. When EA first started making their own boxes and cartridges, they went cheap. They went softbox. In the early days when EA was exerting its independence over Sega, the first boxes to come out from the publisher were these soft cases and its brand new cartridge. There were 6 in total. They weren't the greatest quality boxes, and they'd often end up collapsing with the soft plastic. These hang tabs would be the first to go, and then the corners would eventually break and the spines would start to split. The manuals aren't held in well, just sitting in this recess here. The cartridges could sometimes be a bit of a pain to get out and would often end up with this bit of plastic here and here breaking. But fortunately, there were only 6 that came out in this style. Now, this video is not trying to tell you how to collect, just telling you what there is to collect. For you, a full EA collection could just be the Strike series or all the Yellow Spine games. It's up to you what you class as a full collection for your collection. Now, the next collection we're going to look at are the Australian games that EA released. These are officially released 𝗏 games, but it does get some collectors a little hot and bothered under the collar because these games still came in Genesis packaging, but with stickers on the front to indicate that they were Australian. Let's take a look at them. EA published 4 sports games in Australia. 3 of them would only come out in Australia. 1 of them would get a European 𝗏 variant. Now, because Australia wasn't a huge market, EA just used their Genesis branding for these games. But these games were 𝗏 exclusive ones to Australia. They never came out in Europe. Again, except for a rugby league over here, which got a 𝗏 variant. The first that came out was this one here, 𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗏 Baseball. Now, baseball isn't huge in Australia, but it is in Japan, and the proximity between Japan and Australia meant that a lot of these games would be imported to Japan. So I'm guessing that EA knew that Japan was a big baseball country, didn't have an outlet there to sell these games, and so sold them in Australia, knowing that there'd be some importing going on. Now, like I said, these games look exactly like the Genesis games, except for EA did do some sticker branding here. So the first one we can see here is 𝗵𝗺𝗶𝗴𝗄, and you can see it's got here supported in Australia and New Zealand. So this is a fancy holographic sticker here that you would get if you had the New Zealand copy. Fun fact, the 𝗵𝗺𝗶𝗴𝗄 box is the largest Mega Drive and Genesis box that you can purchase. It's significantly wider than any of the Genesis or Mega Drive boxes that were released. And that's because inside there are a stack of stats cards. Australian Rugby League. This isn't an exclusive to Australia, but it was the first of the games. The European version you can get is exactly the same game, just a different cover on it, but it is a variant of this. And our last two games that were exclusively released in Australia when it comes to PAL territories, 𝗵𝗺𝗶𝗴𝗄𝗏 95 and 𝗏𝗏𝗶𝗴 Baseball. Both of these games are official EA releases that did come out in Australia, a PAL territory. However, EA didn't do anything to them to change the covers, manuals, even the cartridge. They are exactly the same as the Genesis. The only thing they did do was stick a couple of stickers in the corner there to make sure it conformed to the Australian's rating board, and on some of them you'll find that the barcodes down the side were changed so that when you scanned them in Australia to pay for your game, it came up with the Australian dollar. Sweden's up next with two exclusive games that released in this PAL territory. 𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗏 95 and 96 are two games that were released in Sweden. Now, many people just say that these are versions of NHL 95. That's completely incorrect. They are built using the same engine, but the fundamental underlying data structure is completely different. Stats, teams, textures have all been redone to support these two games. So whilst they use the 95 and 96 engine, they are in fact two very different games. Now, over the last 4 years, I've been researching and learning more about this EA collection. And as I've learned more, I've discovered that there are games that came with little collectibles and extras in the boxes. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at now. Now, the first game we're going to be looking at is the Fairy Tale. Now, this game's front cover is really low res, and there's two stories I've heard for this. The first is that the developer actually supplied the screen resolution artwork for this and not the print resolution. The other, which I think is more likely, is that this is a photograph of the DOS box artwork. And because it was a photograph, we have poor lighting on it and lower resolution. Interestingly, this picture has also been flipped. This rock that's coming out here and the character, they're all flipped the other way around in the original artwork. But for the Mega Drive, they flipped it so it could fit this logo in keeping with other Mega Drive games. Right, so apart from the front cover, what's special about this? Well, this game comes with, yes, we've got the manual, we've got our registration card, but it also comes with this little map. And this little map is often missing from the game when people go to collect it. It comes in two halves. I won't take it out of the bag because it's really delicate, but it comes in two halves and gives you a full world map of the actual game. Starflight, the precursor to No Man's Sky. In this game, you got into a ship and explored thousands of planets across different solar systems. You met new alien races, went mining on planets, and got into all sorts of battles. It's a great, great game. It's got some fantastic artwork, some of the best artwork of any of the EA games, but it also came with some extra pieces that you don't normally find. And that is this, another map. Now, this map again shows you all the different planets and solar systems that you can travel to. And it's a really hard item to find because it's so brittle. But here is the map of the known galaxy in Starflight. It's absolutely enormous. All of these different planets with different sectors in it. Absolutely huge. and a great extra if you can find it for your copy of Starflight. Might and Magic. Now this game has a neat little extra, and it even says it on the front cover. Hint book included. Now the hint book itself isn't hard to get hold of. Most collectors will have this in varying conditions. One thing though that is harder to get hold of is this. This is a small leaflet manual that covers all other languages except for English, because English is in here. It's a nice little booklet, but really hard to find. The hint book itself though is absolutely stunning, crammed full of information about the game. Stats, XP, monsters that you're going to go up against, different missions. It's an absolutely stunning extra to get with this game. Lakers vs Celtics. One of the hardest games to get for the 𝗏 Mega Drive collection, and that's because it's not an official release. It's an official game, but it never got a full release here in the UK or anywhere in Europe. The license for it ran out and they couldn't distribute the product. It did, however, get 119 copies made, and these copies would have generally gone to big distributors to try out the game to see if they wanted to pack it, and for magazine reviews. The game though is nothing more than this sleeve and this manual, because the cartridge itself is a $5 cartridge that you can pick up from the States. This game can fetch up to £5,000 for these two pieces of paper. 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏, no way did this come with any cool extras. Well, it did. It actually comes with a CD, or at least some versions did. Now, my copy of the game had a red sticker here, or part of a red sticker just left over in the corner. If it was complete, it would have said free CD on the front here. And indeed, it does come with a free CD. And here it is. Now this same game came out in the States, but they got a really cool piece of artwork for their cover, whereas we got this plastic sleeve inside the game. We're going to mix things up now with two peripherals. Well, one really, in two different boxes. This one here is the European version of the 4-way play adapter. It allowed you to connect 4 controllers to your Sega Mega Drive and play a 4-player game, mostly sports games. This is what your adapter looked like, and it plugged into the 2 ports on front of your Sega Mega Drive. It also came with a ton of paraphernalia. We've got some stickers here that allowed you to mark the different players on each of these and put them onto your joypad as well, so you knew which was your joypad. These were for the cable, so you could run these stickers down the cable so you'd know which one was player 1 to 4. Got a registration card. We've got a pretty hefty manual considering you just plug it into the front of your Sega Mega Drive, and we got an ad for the 4-way play adapter, although pretty useless because I've already bought it. Now this is the EA Sports Genesis 4-way play adapter. This was the US North American release, but it did actually get sold over here in the UK, France and in Germany. A few of the bigger stores picked this version up and were selling it alongside one of the FIFA games. Although this was the official Genesis version sold in North America, it didn't seem to stop the Europeans wanting to get their hands on this sweet EA Sports branding. Next up, 2 of my favourite big boxes on the Sega Mega Drive, which ironically house 2 of the worst games I've played on the console. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And where in time is Carmen Sandiego? These big box games house the actual game themselves and an almanac. And you rarely see them around, as the cardboard they're housed in is very cheap and flimsy and so fell apart. Now some people believe that this game only came in this big box variant, but this is untrue. The game was shipped like this, and there were a few of these that were given out to distributors and to stores to sell. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego big box version is the larger of the 2, with a bigger World Almanac here from 1992. This is the Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego big box, And just like its predecessor, it also comes with an almanac, or world encyclopedia as it says here. But if you own this and you open it up, you'll notice that there is a gap down the side where the cartridge, the game box, is bigger than the almanac. I wondered, why was that when this one here fits so snugly? Well, an eagle-eyed viewer pointed out to me that there should have been a sticker on the front, and they're right. When I was cleaning up this box, there was a round glue patch that I wiped off, and they said that it came with a watch, this version, and they're right. Looking around, I did find images of the sticker that says this comes with an EA Sports watch. After a lot of looking, I finally found that very watch. And so this version has not only the almanac and the game, but also the watch that came with the big box. When we unpack the Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego big box, we find that we've got the encyclopedia, we got the game, and we have this, the EA watch, the freebie that's missing from most of these boxes. It's actually a cheap Chinese watch manufactured for the 1992 Olympics, and there are several different versions of this watch out there. My guess is that they made too many of these watches and ended up selling them on as cheap promotional items to other companies. There's a Kellogg's version of this watch, a US Olympics team version of the watch. There's even a version of the watch that was given away free with a Sega magazine. That version had a triangle logo on the wrist strap. And this one has the EA branding on it. Now the watch is really cheap. If you take the back off and take the insides out, you'll notice that this functionality, these things at the top here, are just a piece of plastic. All the watch can do is tell you the date and the time. Ah, variants, the rabbit hole of collecting. We're going to be looking now at major variants that came out for EA. Now, major variants for me are cartridges where the ROM was different printed labels, completely different, not error prints, and completely different cover art. There are variants where on some Mega Drive games you get 4 languages instead of 5, and then for those really hardcore collectors, there's games out there that came with different printed labels on them from different stores. Not even EA labels, just store labels. Those guys are in a league of their own. Now, we've already seen a couple of variants in this video. We've seen Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego Big Box and Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego Big Box. These are the standard editions. These are the versions that you would have picked off the shelves and were more commonly sold. They didn't take up as much space on the shelf, so these were more desirable when it came to retail. We've also seen these two variants as well. We had soft box versions of these two games here, Zany Golf and John Madden American Football. After the soft box went the way of the Dodo and EA replaced them with hard-cased clamshells, they re-released these games in these boxes. They didn't change the sleeves at all, and you can see here that the yellow spines don't go to the edge of the boxes. They kept exactly the same sleeves for these as well. Did you know that FIFA 98 had 4 cover variants? It got one for Spain, and one for France, and one for Italy. I don't have the Italian version yet, and it's the only one missing from my entire EA collection. Blockout also had 2 cartridge variants. The first was this, the grey label, the more common one. I've got a dreaded P on mine. And this one here, the yellow label, also came out in Europe and was a later re-release. And Panini did it the honour of also creating one of its cards for it. Did you know that PGA Tour Golf 2 was so popular that it got a re-release with a brand spanking new cover to go with it? Probably the most well-known variants for the EA collection are these, the EA Classics. There are 7 classic games that EA released for the Sega Mega Drive, and this box you can see here is one that I created. I wanted to make something that was authentic, something that EA would have put out back in the day. And so all the materials you can see here, the thin card, the plastic at the front, the tone of voice in the marketing messaging, and all of the artwork around it is something I think EA would have done back in the day. The EA Collection is huge, with them being the second biggest publisher only behind Sega to release games on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. They account for nearly 20% of the entire collection. And it's only natural that having that many games released on a platform that a few of them are going to be great. And here are 5 of my top EA games on the Mega Drive. Rings of Power, an awesome isometric RPG and Naughty Dog's first console game. The Immortal, stunning visuals, ball-bustering hard, and a game that doesn't necessarily make it into everyone's top 5 for EA games. But for me, it's one of my favorites. General Chaos, probably the most chaotic multiplayer game you can get on your Sega Mega Drive. I'm a massive fan of Cyberpunk, and The Syndicate is an all-time favourite of mine. At number 1, it's Desert Strike, and this also got 2 Panini cards made for it. So what about the games that we didn't get in PAL territories? What about the Sega Genesis games that were exclusive to North America? So we've learnt a little bit more about the EA Collection. We've seen variants, games that came with extra stuff, games that were only available in certain territories. And now it's time to look at the full core collection for the Sega PAL Mega Drive. So we come to the end of this week's show where we've covered the full Sega PAL EA collection. Now that's not the end of the EA story, there's a ton of other stuff that EA touched on the console. More games they helped develop, development stories, the relationship between Sega and EA as well. Now as you can imagine, putting a video together like this takes a lot of time and you may spot one or two mistakes as you go through. Feel free to point them out in the comments below and share with me anything you think I've missed from the EA collection. Now, if this is your first time watching the Retro Gamer Boys show and you have enjoyed what you've seen, why not consider subscribing? You can do this by clicking on the little button just below this video. Hitting that little thumbs up is always good for us as it helps share this video and grow the channel. And of course, drop down into the comments below and let me know what you think about EA games on the Sega Mega Drive and Sega Genesis. That's all we've got for this week, and I'll catch you on the next one.